For spine-chilling tales of cursed truckers on Sinister, haunted roads revealed at midnight, Rachel sat in silence as the world outside her suburban home draped itself in the cloak of night. The trees whispered secrets, cicadas hummed their sad lullabies, and the infamous white picket fences drew stark lines against shadows that danced in the dim light. A single mother at 32, she was worn thin, keeping the peace in her quiet sanctuary while working late shifts at the hospital. Her life, mundane yet necessary, coursed daily with exhaustion, but those precious moments when her children Emily and Ethan were fast asleep brought a fragile joy. Then, that ordinary Wednesday night, her phone quaked violently, shattering the stillness. Jake's voice roared through the receiver, his breath ragged, words tumbling like stones. He was on a deserted highway, a stretch known for its ghostly tales and eerie disappearances. Panic clutched at Rachel's gut as he described the unmarked truck that followed him, relentless, its headlights flickering like malevolent eyes. Every word he spoke dripped with fear, and her heart beat faster as memories surfaced, murmurs about truckers vanishing, families torn apart at the seams of disbelief and despair. "Rachel, it's not just a story, it's real." Jake's trembling voice was now laced with desperation. Her own panic escalated. She remembered Gus, another friend from high school, a seasoned trucker with a knack for ghost stories and roadside horrors. She tried dialing his number, her fingers shaking, but the phone rang endlessly in the stillness, mirroring her rising dread. Before she could break the spell of worry, a thud echoed outside, sharp, heavy, metallic. It huddled in the dark like something sinister, striking fear deep within her core. Why hadn't she locked the door? Every horror she had ever pushed to the back of her mind twisted alongside her thoughts, sharpening into a brutal clarity. She considered waking Emily and Ethan, but their dreamlike innocence seemed a fragile shield against the gathering darkness. As she crept toward the patio door, flashlight in hand, shadows sagged and stretched as if taunting her. What was lurking out there? She felt cold sweat against her back. Every instinct screamed for her to stay inside, yet it gnawed at her, the fear of failing her kids, of being the one to let danger seep through the cracks of their perfectly safe haven. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every creak of the floor, every rustle in the breeze grew louder. She hushed her breathing, slowly opening the door, revealing the outer darkness cloaked in silence. The air felt alive as if it thrummed with unseen danger. Her heart raced, every inch of her screamed to turn back, but she anticipated the worst, the horrific truth hidden just beyond her sight. As she prepared to step out, a figure loomed in her peripheral vision, a shadow melting into the engulfing darkness. Was it real? Or just a figment of her mind's panic? The neighborhood, once tranquil and secure, twisted into a landscape of horror as Rachel's worst fears gripped her heart. In that fleeting moment, she understood, the truck wasn't just on the road to nowhere, its driver might be lurking in the places she once deemed safe. Clutching the flashlight like a lifeline, she peered into the creeping shadow. As the clock hands strained toward midnight, she held her breath, realizing the questions that would haunt her. Who prowled outside her door? And would she be able to protect her children as horror unfolded just steps away? The darkness swallowed Rachel as she stepped onto the patio, flashlight trembling in her grasp. The faint beam barely pierced the veil of night, illuminating just enough to confirm that the world had become a stranger. She could sense it, a presence lurking beyond the limits of her wavering light. "Jake," she whispered into the stillness, her voice trembling against the quiet. She needed him, needed to hear he was safe, but the phone lay forgotten in her pocket, stifled by her rising terror. As she took a cautious step forward, gravel crunched under her shoe, and in that frail sound, every terrifying story of abandoned stretches and cursed truckers fluttered back to her. The chill in the air seemed to bite deeper, and as her flashlight flicked nervously from side to side, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Her heart drummed relentlessly against her chest. She strained to listen, to catch any sound, but only the whispered rustle of leaves dared to answer. Approaching the edge of her yard, she felt another thud, this one lighter, almost like a footfall sinking into the earth. Rachel's breath caught. "Is anyone there?" she called, the words sounding hollow, echoing back like a taunt. The ink-black woods loomed behind her, a fortress of shadows, and she felt an urge to flee to the safety of her home, but a motheress instinct compelled her to stay. What if something was or someone was out there? Then, from the corner of her flashlight S-beam, she caught a fleeting glimpse. A figure tall and disproportionate slipped between the trees. The light swung, illuminating nothing but thick bark and creeping vines. She wanted to believe it was her imagination, yet dread coiled tighter around her. The stories flooded back the truckers who vanished into nothingness, replaced by unsettling whispers on ghostly winds. Rachel blinked hard and forced herself to move forward. The porch steps creaked beneath her, protesting her approach to danger. She sensed time move differently, every second became laborious, stretching out like the shadows that clung to her. A chill rattled her bones as, from beyond the fence, came the unmistakable sound of a heavy engine rumbling to life. The sheer weight of it made her skin crawl like a predator awakening from slumber. "Jake!" She shouted again, desperately hoping he could hear her, as warmth surged through her. But again, silence mocked her response. She sprinted back inside, heart pounding, locking the door behind her. The metallic click felt like a fragile shield against the encroaching fear. She needed to be strong, to protect her children. But as she turned, eyes darting toward the living room, dread clawed at her throat. Emily and Ethan were still asleep, oblivious to the shadows weaving tales around them. They needed her. Their tiny forms nestled on the couch radiated safety and innocence. But when she peered out the window, her breath left her entirely. The unmarked truck sat at the end of the street, its headlights off, cloaking it in deceptive stillness. Rachel's grip on the flashlight tightened, shadows shifted as the figure she had glimpsed outside now emerged, a wavering silhouette blending into the darkness, searching. Her instincts screamed. Just then, the phone buzzed violently once more. A message blinked from Jake. "I see it too. Don't open the door." Panic suffocated her. Was the danger truly within or just outside? What did he see? Suddenly, a soft knock reached her ear, the kind that sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. "Rachel?" A voice came, too familiar yet foreign, low and chilling. "Open the door, it's me." Her heart stopped. She stepped back from the door, paralyzed, realization dawning. Was it truly Jake outside? Or something much worse wearing his voice? The knock came again, slow and deliberate. Rachel felt the shadows pressing in, pinning her against the world she thought she knew. Just who or what was waiting outside her doorstep? She had to decide. Time was slipping away, the air thick with their silent screams. What if the real horror lay not in the truck or the dark? What if it was something much closer? Rachel's heart thundered in her chest, each beat amplifying the cold dread wrapped around her. The knock came again, insistent and haunting. "Rachel, please, it's me," that voice echoed with a desperate plea, twisting her gut with its familiarity. She could hardly breathe. What if it really was Jake? No, she shook her head. His voice had carried an edge she hadn't noticed before. It felt wrong, disturbed, like a shadow lurking beneath his familiar tone. Moments stretched. The air thickened with tension as she cursed her indecision. He needed her. But a darker instinct hissed that this was a cruel game. "Rachel! Open the door!" The voice twisted, and the desperation morphed into something chilling, laced with a venomous hiss. Rachel recoiled. With shaky hands, she pressed her ear to the door, seeking tactile confirmation, expecting to hear the heart of the man who had been her companion. Instead, silence roared, and ghosts of memories flickered in her mind, taunting her. "Mommy?" A soft, innocent voice broke through the tension. "Emily." Rachel spun around, breath catching in her throat. Her little girl stood at the edge of the hall, clutching a blanket, eyes wide with concern. "Is it Daddy?" She couldn't answer. Her throat felt like it was closing, the siege of fear rendering her mute. "Sweetie, stay right there." She managed, trying to put steel in her voice, but it quaked anyway. "Why are you scared?" Emily ventured. Rachel forced on a smile, the movement struggling against the chaos in her mind. "It's just a bad storm." It was a lie, stretched thin and falling apart. She had to shield her children. Just stay with Ethan, okay? I'll be back in a minute. The next knock came harder, reverberating through the frame, the wood groaning in agony as something heavy pressed against it. Rachel! Let me in. They're coming for you. That voice twisted again, sharper now, predatory. She felt the weight of shadows accosting her on all sides, echoing the story she had heard growing up about men who returned home, only to be nothing like the loved ones who left. What if she opened the door to find a body wearing Jake's face? The very thought turned her blood to ice. No! Stay away! She shouted, clenching her fists against the growing tide of dread. The sound of an engine roared in the distance, creeping nearer, like a monstrous serenade to the chaos unfolding within her home. The unknown truck's presence loomed heavy in her mind. Rachel darted toward the living room, scanning for something, anything, to shield her children from the horror. The room felt suffocating, walls squeezing in, the darkness wrapping tighter. She saw the old baseball bat Jake's, a remnant of peaceful nights watching their boys play, and she grasped it. The familiar weight against her palm provided a momentary anchor. Mommy! Emily whimpered again, drawing her attention. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, summoning courage. I'm here. Keep Ethan safe while I'll be right back. As she turned back toward the door, the finality of her decision crashed into her mind. The familiar thud of footsteps shook the porch, close and lingering. She could almost feel breath on the other side, hot and sinister. Rachel, the voice crooned in a terrible mimicry, sending a wave of revolt on through her. I can't hold them off, let me in. No. A desperate urgency propelled her. She had to act. With hands trembling, she tightened her grip on the bat and crept toward the door. With each second, a million possibilities spooled out, each worse than the last. What if it's not just Jake? A part of her whispered, panic swelling in her throat. What if the real threat was much deeper, twisting its roots through her mind? She was inches away from the door when a loud crash sounded from the kitchen, the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. Rachel froze, heart lurching as the chaos unfurled like tendrils of darkness around her. The figure outside paused, an unnatural stillness cloaking the air. Then a chilling laugh echoed the sound, brittle and broken. You think you're safe? You've only just begun to see the truth. Time stood still as dread washed over her. What truth? Anxiety knotted deep in her gut. There was something far more sinister afoot. Before she could react, the door rattled violently. Rachel! Open up! She positioned herself, bat ready, gaze flickering from the door to the kitchen where danger lurked unseen. The night deepened around her, a labyrinth of horrors awaiting her every choice. What would happen if she opened the door? Would hell rain down behind it? Or was that chaos already inside, waiting for the moment to strike? Stay here! She called, heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos, aware that the worst was yet to come. Would Rachel be able to keep her children safe, or would the shadows consume them all? The kitchen was a swirling storm of panic and urgency. Rachel's grip tightened on the bat, knuckles white against the darkened wood. She forced herself to move toward the sound, each step a battle against the surging dread inside her. The shards of glass glinted on the floor, sharp little reminders that everything was unraveling. Ethan! She called, her voice trembling but loud and clear. Get Emily to the back of the house. This isn't safe. She jabbed a thumb toward the shadowy doorway. He didn't respond immediately, and that stillness felt strange and wrong. Mom! Ethan's voice came, echoing from the other room, tinged with confusion. I'm trying. Desperate, Rachel edged toward the kitchen. The chaos was deafening. The storm outside roared in harmony with the turmoil inside her home. She couldn't think straight. Memories of Jake flooded her mind, reliving moments of laughter and warmth, but those flashes were stained by the echo of that twisted voice at the door, promising a truth that felt dangerous. Another crash broke through her thoughts. Something heavy barreled against the kitchen island, sending disorder through the room. She froze, breath caught in her throat as she glanced toward the shadows creeping along the walls. What if a figure materialized, something foreign and sinister lurking behind the flickering light? Mommy! Emily's frightened plea pierced through the gloom, rushing back into the hallway. Rachel's heart raced. But the sight of her children huddled together, their small frames so vulnerable, sparked a fire of fierce protection inside her. "Stay there!" she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. Behind the kitchen door, movement stirred. Shadows coiled and blended, whispering secrets that felt just beyond her comprehension. She gritted her teeth, heart hammering as she peered toward the ominous door that led to the rest of the house. That voice, Jake's unsettling mimicry, reverberated again from outside. "Rachel! Please! Don't be foolish! I can help you!" Her mind turned, filled with a medley of thoughts, images of their life before, bright and full, dimmed by this encroaching terror. A finely inked handle would throw everything she knew into chaos, but what about the chaos already lurking? Then came the sound that twisted her stomach, the unmistakable grind of metal on metal from outside. The hairs on her neck prickled as she recognized it, the truck engine growling more aggressively, swallowed by the darkness. It all felt like an elaborate trap, designed to ensnare her in the mess of decisions she detested. Every instinct screamed at her to lock the door and guard her children, but what if she was already too late? As time slipped through her fingers, rage surged within her, a desire to confront whatever had invaded their lives. "Is it really you?" she shouted, casting caution to the wind. "Are you really Jake?" Silence fell, heavy and thick. The shadows at the door shifted as if reconsidering her. Then that laughter returned, rich and twisted. "You're wrong, he is gone. I'm all that's left now." Rachel flinched, bat raised high, teeth clenched. Rage collided with fear, and she wasn't sure which would win. In her world, light blurred with darkness, everything felt monstrous now. Then another crash echoed, louder this time, sending the children bolting further back into the hallway, their small cries igniting her protective spirit. She gritted her teeth, pressed against the cold wall by the door, ready to swing. Whatever haunted them, she wouldn't let it take her family until she had drawn every last breath. The figure paused again, and seconds stretched unnaturally as she weighed her choices: face the writhing fear outside or retreat, protect her children from horrors unleashed. But the children were in danger. She couldn't ignore that. Just as she resolved to act, the doorknob twisted violently. The wood splintered ominously. "Let me in. They're coming. You have to believe me," Rachel shrieked, baring her teeth. "Get down," she ordered, throwing her weight against the door. The shadows outside loomed larger, more feral. As the door buckled beneath that relentless force, she realized it wasn't just her husband's voice pleading. It was something darker, something that thrived on fear. Would she find Jake, or would she open the door to truly confront the nightmare gathering outside? Her heart raced with dread, but a flicker of determination rose within her. "Don't let it in," her thoughts screamed. "Whatever it is, you have to fight." The door shivered again, and whatever awaited her beyond the threshold pushed forward, as if drawn by an insatiable hunger. Rachel braced herself, prepared to defend her children against everything lurking in the night. But should she face the monster, or seal their fate by keeping the door closed? The answer might just shatter everything she knew, and the echoes of that night would haunt her forever. The wood splintered with a final ferocious crack, and the door swung open, revealing a suffocating wall of darkness. A gust of wind rushed in, swirling with an unnatural chill that clawed at Rachel's skin like icy fingers. Her breath hitched, but her resolve hardened. No monsters would take her children tonight. With a primal scream, she swung the bat through the opening, but there was nothing. Just emptiness, a void that laughed at her fear. "Mom!" Ethan cried, his voice laced with terror. "Don't!" The shadows writhed, whispering secrets she couldn't hear but felt deep within her bones. They twisted into grotesque shapes that danced at the edges of her vision, beckoning her to step inside their inky embrace. The storm outside roared louder, as if mocking her, fanning the flames of her panic. "Stay in the hall," she snapped, her voice sharp. Every nerve in her body buzzed with adrenaline. She needed to maintain control, to be the anchor for her family in this storm of madness. Biting her lip, Rachel stepped cautiously into the darkness. The sudden hush was deafening, a void that swallowed all sound. She dared to glance back at her children, their small frames trembling under the weight of their unfathomable fear. If anything happened, she couldn't let that shadowy force reach them. "Jake?" she called, each syllable tasting of fear. "Is that really you?"
Silence responded, thick and menacing.
Then came that twisted laughter, echoing from the abyss, twisting her insides.
You're weak, Rachel. Just like before. You can't save them.
She shook her head, fueling her rage.
Shut up. You're not him.
But doubt slipped through the cracks of her bravado.
Was it really Jake?
The flicker of warmth from their past blended with the coldness of the reality before her, softening her resolve. The more she hesitated, the louder the voice became, more compelling, more sinister. Suddenly, a loud bang erupted from the hallway. Rachel spun around, bat at the ready, but all she saw was Emily crying, her little hands over her ears.
Please, Mommy. Don't.
The shadows outside roiled with restless energy, the storm intensifying. She felt like a pawn in a game she didn't understand, watched by hungry eyes in the depths of night. The true fight had yet to begin. Just then, she heard a slow, deliberate thump, thump, thump from outside, like footsteps drawing nearer through the pouring rain, the unmistakable sound of something heavy approaching. Rachel's heart raced as she backed away from the door, still raised, bracing for the worst.
Mommy!
Ethan cried again, catching her attention.
I see it, I see them. Panic erupted in her chest. What do you see?
She stepped back into the hall, ready to grab her kids and run. But Ethan was frozen, his wide eyes unblinking. The shapes, they're coming, and it's a truck, Mom.
A big one, and it's coming for us. Rachel's stomach dropped as realization swept over her.
The truck from the storm, the thing Ethan had said was lurking, it was here, and she could sense it. The air grew thick with dread, a palpable energy that hinted at something terrible awakening.
Get down. Now.
She ordered, her voice shaking, but the urgency in her tone ignited a spark. She pushed the children behind her, stepping forward as the shadows danced around them, mocking her fumble for control. The truck engine roared louder, its metallic voice a warning, ripping through the storm's howling.
Another crash rang out, this one more violent, a prelude to an oncoming dread. The front door shuddered as something outside paced repeatedly, heavy and deliberate.
Rachel clenched the bat, heart pounding in her chest like a bedlam drum.
Whatever is out there, I won't let it take you.
But that voice washed over her again.
You can't fight me, Rachel. I'm inside you now. You'll never escape.
And just as she steadied herself to confront the looming presence outside, a silhouette emerged, a hulking figure backlit by the storm, inching forward with a feral grace. The darkness pulsed, and in her mind, the echoes of her memories twisted like vines, squeezing the truth from her heart. Should she fight the creature that wore the skin of her husband, or was it something far more nefarious, something waiting in the dark to devour her family? As the figure stepped fully into view, the storm outside quieted, the world holding its breath. They locked eyes, and she felt the weight of every decision pressing down like a leaden cloak. Would she face this darkness, or would she succumb to the shadows creeping closer, threatening to snatch everything she loved? The moment stretched as she readied herself. There was no turning back now, not for her, not for Ethan or Emily. It was time to find out what was truly waiting for them, but would the truth set her free, or trap them all in an even deeper nightmare? The figure loomed closer, defined by stark shadows that swallowed every hint of familiarity. Rachel's heart thundered in her ears as she felt the children tremble behind her. The man, this monster, had the same dark hair, the same haunted eyes she once loved. But the resemblance twisted her gut like barbed wire. Jake, she whispered, each breath tasting of desperation. The creature smiled, a grin that cut through the darkness. Rachel, it crooned, tainted with malice, you always were so naive.
Stay back.
She shouted, raising the bat high, feeling its weight shift in her grip. Time slowed as the raw panic of the moment solidified into pure instinct. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't her husband. It's me, he said, taking another step. The shadows fluttered around him, like live things. Come closer, my love. I'm here to help. Rachel's mind reeled.
Was it really him?
She couldn't trust the seductive pull of that voice, but the ache in her chest screamed otherwise. She glanced back at Ethan and Emily, their eyes wide and glistening with tears. They needed her strength, not doubts. With a sudden intake of breath, she took a step forward, only to feel the air thicken, the darkness tightening around her like a noose.
"Get away from my children!"
The laughter returned, gravelly and layered, reverberating in her skull.
"You really think you can protect them? You don't even know what's lurking in the shadows."
She held her ground.
"You're not Jake. You're a monster." His smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp, too perfect. "Am I? Or am I just the truth you hide from yourself?" Her palms tingled with adrenaline, threatening to shake the bat from her grip.
She forced herself to breathe. The moment stretched taut, laden with the weight of her choices, the fear of loss flooding her veins. Then, a deafening noise erupted from the side of the house, a crash like thunder that pulled her attention momentarily.
"Get down!"
she hollered, eyes darting away from the figure.
The world spun in an unsteady blur.
Something collided with the walls, more than the wind it had weight, purpose. The shadows quivered at the sound, and for a split second, she thought the darkness itself was afraid.
"Mom!"
Ethan called, his fear replacing the calm she needed. Rachel staggered backward, trying to assess the unending night, fixating on the source of the sound.
It was echoing from every direction, almost chaotic, yet orchestrated.
The shadows began to quiver violently, coiling and shifting as if anticipating the horror just waiting to burst forth. Soon, Rachel, the creature taunted, drifting slowly toward the bat's reach. Soon they will see the truth. Beneath her resolve, fear clawed deeper.
She had to act. "This ends now."
With a flick of her wrist, she swung the bat hard, right at the monster's head, but it was met with nothing but a gust of wind. The figure vanished into thin air, as if he had been mere smoke. The children shrieked, pressed together against the wall, and Rachel felt her heart sink as realization rushed in. This was only the beginning. From outside, the growls came deep and resonant, echoing her dread. They filled the space, a predatory chorus that signified something worse than she could imagine was making its way to them.
"Mom!"
Emily cried, her voice quavering, thick with fear.
Rachel swallowed hard, dread pooling at the pit of her stomach. They weren't safe yet. "Stay close,"
she shouted, backing towards the stairs, eyes flicking to the windows where shadows began to swell, pressing against the glass as if to break in it with every step. Reality twisted like a funhouse mirror. The storm outside roared again, and the truck's engine rumbled ominously, woven with sinister intent. Descending the steps felt like a race against time, chasing shadows of sanity clinging to the surroundings. As they reached the bottom, the monstrous growls grew louder, more pronounced. Something scratched at the windows, heavy and deliberate, claws scuttling over the frame. Rachel felt her breath hitch again, longing for the light, the one thing that could shield them from the terror.
"Closing in. We need to make a run for it," she yelled, adrenaline surging through her.
But just as she turned to scoop up Emily, the door burst open, fracturing the oppressive stillness. A figure clad in dark clothes filled the entryway, his face obscured by soaking rain. The storm outside screamed like a terrifying warning.
Was he friend or foe?
The question weighed down her heart as she took a step back, feeling the undeniable promise of fate circling them all. The storm hadn't just brought a truck, it had unleashed something far more chilling. She had to decide, would she trust the stranger in the doorway, or would she steel herself against whatever hunted them from the shadows?
And just like that, a bone-chilling howl erupted from outside, echoing through the night. As darkness entwined with dread, Rachel realized, the true nightmare was only beginning. What awaited them in the haunting howls of the storm? The stranger stepped forward, rain-soaked and wild-eyed, his silhouette absorbing the murky gloom. "They're coming!"
he shouted, voice hoarse, frantic.
"You have to get out now."
Rachel's instincts screamed danger, but something about his urgency anchored her.
"Who are you?"
she demanded, heart racing as the growls outside intensified, reverberating through the walls like an unholy symphony.
"Jake's not safe, you're in grave danger."
He pointed at the door, his extended finger trembling.
"They'll want to take you. They won't stop until they do."
Ethan clutched Rachel's leg, eyes wide, and behind her, Emily pressed herself tightly against the wall, whimpering softly. The terrible cries from outside morphed into something more than sound, they became tangible, heavy with intent.
"Mom! I don't want to go."
Ethan's voice cracked, Filled with the palpable dread that shivered through the air, her mind raced. A decision had to be made. The figure at the door looked desperate. Maybe he was right. Teetering on the edge of panic, Rachel felt the weight of her choices start to crush her. Without breaking her gaze from the dark figure, she whispered to Ethan, "If we run, we need to stick together no matter what. The longer you wait, the worse it gets." He insisted, his eyes frantically darting toward the door, where shadows were beginning to slip inside, curling around the edges like fingers reaching for warmth. "Fine." She nodded, swallowing hard. "We'll go. But you need to help us." "I will." He stepped into the room, desperation morphing to resolve. "Follow me, I can help you get to safety." The moment felt fragile, like a glass ball teetering on the edge of a table. Rachel wanted to trust him, but trust had never kept her family safe. Suddenly, a screech pierced through the air, more primal than the growls. It sent a shock down Rachel's spine, freezing her to the spot. What was out there? "Now!" the stranger urged, urgency hardening his features. "We don't have time." With no more moments to waste, Rachel grabbed Emily's hand tightly and beckoned Ethan forward. "We need to go now." They rushed towards the door. As they stepped out into the torrential rain, the cold moisture clung to them, but it wasn't the weather that chilled Rachel to her core. The front yard loomed before them, shrouded in darkness, and Rachel's heart raced. The wind howled, carrying with it the whispers of unseen things lurking. They could still hear the monster's cries echoing behind them, swirling in the shadows like a malignant thing eager for their warmth. The stranger turned swiftly, glancing back at the house. "This way." He pointed into the inky blackness, leading them toward the line of trees bordering their property. Each sound ignited the urge to flee, but she couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. They sprinted, breathless, slipping through mud, as the branches overhead swayed ominously in the gusts. The darkness swelled, and behind them, the growls grew louder, more urgent, more alive, primal notes of hunger and wrath. Just then, Rachel stumbled, her foot sinking into an unseen hole. She gasped, her heart dropping as she tried to regain balance. The old fear crept back. If she fell, would they leave her behind? The stranger reached out, pulling her up. "Stay close. Keep moving." His voice was both a command and a promise. A flicker of light in the distance caught her eye, a flash of hope amidst despair. "Over there!" she yelled, urging them forward, but as they dashed through the underbrush, they heard it, the unmistakable sound of claws tearing into flesh. High-pitched screams erupted behind them. Rachel's heart dropped. They had caught someone, just not her. "No. We can't go back," Ethan cried, pulling at her hand. "We won tea." She pressed on, dragging her son and daughter through the murk of terror, driven by a primal instinct to survive. Shadows danced at the periphery of their vision, flickering like nightmares come to life. The growling morphed, now tainted with the sounds of wailing, a chorus of souls trapped in horror. Just as they neared the light, Rachel dared a glance back. The figure in the door shifted, the original horror manifesting before her again, an echo of the man she loved. "Rachel!" His voice called sweetly, laced with darkness. "Join us." A scream clawed its way out of her throat, but she didn't stop. Fleeing was all that mattered now, fleeing from the truth of who now stood behind her. As they broke through into the clearing, the light illuminated a twisted road, but nothing felt safe. Who could tell if it was the end of their chase, or merely the start of a new nightmare? And as they broke into the open, dread settled heavily in the pit of her stomach. Terrifying howls echoed around them, revealing a truth they couldn't escape. The darkness knew them, and it wasn't finished yet. What other horrors awaited them on this road in the haunting shadow of the storm? The atmosphere in the clearing felt oppressive, like a blanket of dread smothering any glimmer of hope. Rachel squinted against the pulsing light, its source now clearer, an old street lamp flickering just ahead, casting jagged shadows that danced along the cracked pavement. The wind whipped around them, and rain dripped off her chin, mixing with the cold sweat pooling at her neck. "Mom, where are we?" Ethan asked, trembling. His voice was small, swallowed by the night. "I don't know," Rachel admitted, fear creeping into her heart. "But we have to keep moving." "Which way?" Emily whispered, her wide eyes searching the darkness, desperate for guidance. The stranger, now leading them, hesitated. He looked back at the house, then scanned the surroundings.
Road should lead us to town.
It's not far from here, but we need to stay quiet. He gestured toward the trees that lined both sides of the road, shadows lurking ominously amongst the trunks. For a moment, silence enveloped them. Then, as if summoned by their fear, the sounds returned, unearthly howls reverberating, clawing at the night air. Rachel clenched her fists, instinct urging her to run, but her feet felt like lead.
Rachel! The voice from behind echoed again, warm yet chilling.
It reached into the deepest corners of her mind, drumming up memories she wished to forget.
Don't you see? You belong with me now, shut up!
She shouted, surprising even herself. It wasn't just the words, it was the conviction behind them, a declaration against the shadows that threatened to consume her family.
Let us go. The stranger urged, finally breaking the spell of hesitation.
They took their first step onto the old road, the pavement slick beneath their shoes. Each footfall felt like a countdown to something inevitable.
Time slipped by unnoticed, their breaths growing ragged.
The night pulsed with life, a sinister energy thrumming just beneath the surface.
Rachel could sense things in the dark, watching, waiting.
Her heart raced faster with each beat. Then, suddenly, the ground under Ethan gave way with a sickening squelch. Both of his shoes stuck in gloppy mud at the road's edge.
"Mom, help!"
he cried, panic lacing his voice.
"Ethan!"
Rachel hurried back, fear clawing at her throat. She pulled at his arms while Emily looked on, wide-eyed, clutching the hem of Rachel's coat.
"Are you okay?"
Rachel asked, struggling to keep her voice steady despite the rising terror.
"I can't, my shoes."
He choked out, fighting against the sucking grip of the earth.
The howls grew louder, frantic and almost joyous, bouncing off the trees as if celebrating their distress.
Rachel glanced back, the darkness behind them shifting, swirling as if alive. The silhouette of the figure lingered under the street lamp, its features obscured but familiar, a nightmare she couldn't escape.
"Leave him!"
the stranger shouted, panic breaking through his tone.
"We have to go, or we'll all be caught." "No!" Rachel cried, the desperation bubbling over.
"I want to let him go."
With a sudden surge of strength, she yanked Ethan free, shoes left behind as they reeled back toward the stranger.
But as they stumbled back onto the road, a figure moved from the shadows, a grotesque creature, half-formed and dripping with darkness, licking its teeth. It sniffed the air, its face a mask of hunger, and then let out a bone-chilling howl.
"Run!"
the stranger shouted again, already dashing down the road. Without thinking, Rachel grabbed both children and ran, fear sending adrenaline coursing through her veins. They sprinted past the trees, their branches like skeletal hands clutching for them. The cold night air felt thick as they dashed ahead. But every step forward was met with resistance. The growls of unseen monsters grew louder, chasing them down the road. An energy warped around them, a damp, stifling essence filled with dread.
"Mom! I can't keep up."
Ethan's voice was strained, a desperate plea that echoed Rachel's own heartbeat.
"Don't look back. Just keep running,"
Rachel yelled, pushing herself forward. But as she glanced to the left, she caught a fleeting glimpse of eyes reflecting, green and hungry, staring right at them from the woods. They thundered down the road, breathless, hearts racing toward something unknown. The street lamp flickered, dimming just as the howls crescendoed behind them, merging into a thunderous roar that sent a jolt of terror through her bones. And as they turned a sharp corner, a chilling thought struck her. What if they were running toward something worse? What if the darkness didn't just want them? What if it meant to trap them forever? The road ahead twisted, its destination shrouded in the same murky weight that had pursued them. As Rachel pushed forward, she felt despair settle into her heart, an anchor that dragged deep, binding her to the fear that had become her reality. Then, just ahead, something loomed, something dark and gigantic, contrasting against the fading light.
They were running toward the unknown, but were they truly escaping?
Or had they merely led themselves into another snare crafted by whatever darkness followed them? Something told her this was just the beginning of their nightmare, and the worst was yet to come.
What awaited them in that chilling shadow ahead?
The looming shadow shifted, expanding like a dark cloud swallowing what little light remained. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as they drew closer. Panic surged, her instincts screaming to turn and run back, to escape the creeping dread that saturated the air. But the road was relentless, its cracked pavement urging them on while the distant howls transformed into a cacophony of monstrous laughter, echoing through the trees.
"Mom! I see a building."
Emily's voice broke through the chaos, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and fear. Rachel squinted, and through the fog of her terror, she spotted the outline of a structure, its once proud silhouette now tangled in shadow and half derelict.
"Let us go!" Rachel shouted, surging toward the building with renewed urgency.
Ethan followed closely, his small hand grasping tightly at hers, but behind them, the creature had shifted, its growls morphing into a bark that sent chills racing down her spine. They drew closer, the presence of the unknown pressing tight against their backs like a looming storm. As they reached the threshold of the structure, Rachel nearly stumbled as she kicked open the door, its hinges creaking mournfully in protest. Inside, darkness enveloped them, thicker than the night outside. The air stank of mildew and decay. Rachel felt Emily cling closer, her cold fingers digging into her arm as if to anchor herself against the sinister aura of the place.
"Are we safe here?"
Ethan whispered, his voice barely above a murmur.
"I don't know," Rachel admitted, scanning the room.
It was empty except for dust and the remnants of old furniture, chairs overturned, an old wooden table that stood askew as if it had been abandoned in haste. As she stepped inside, the door creaked ominously and slammed shut behind them.
"Mom! It's not open!"
Ethan whimpered, pulling at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge.
Panic crept back into Rachel's heart.
She banged on the door, a heartbeat echoing with each impact.
"Let us out!"
The shadows deepened. The hairs on Rachel's arms stood on end as whispers flitted around her, close enough to hear yet indistinct, slithering between the walls like a sinister wind.
"Get down!"
The stranger hissed, crouching low, raising a finger to his lips. Rachel glanced at him, confusion swirling with panic.
Why was he quieting them now?
"They're close," he whispered, eyes darting toward the window. She followed his gaze and swallowed hard.
Outside, dark forms were slinking around the building, blending seamlessly with the night.
Rachel's heart pounded louder, drowning out her thoughts. She crouched beside the children, feeling Emily tremble against her side. "We have to be quiet," she breathed, desperate to calm them, although her own voice trembled. Then came a thud against the door, followed by another. The thing outside was testing the barrier, eager to devour the fear radiating from within.
"Mom! I can't!"
Ethan whimpered, squeezing his eyes shut. "Sure," Rachel said, as a low growl resonated from the other side, vibrating through the floorboards. The fear twisting in her stomach now gripped like icy fingers, squeezing tighter with each muffled thud. The walls felt alive, watching, waiting as time stretched onward. The whispers grew louder, the words slithering around Rachel's ears, merging with the thumps, creating a vicious rhythm that threatened to drown her sanity. It felt like each syllable was constructing a web, drawing her deeper into something she couldn't grasp. And then, among them, one voice rang clear, a mocking tone piercing through the chaos. "You can never escape." Rachel's skin crawled. "We need to find a way out," she whispered fiercely, pulling the children to their feet. The stranger nodded, glancing uneasily at the closed window. But just as they turned toward it, a series of loud cracks splintered across the room, splitting the very fabric of their reality. Rachel's heart plummeted when she realized the cracks weren't just in the walls, they were coming from inside her mind, a fracture of safe and nightmare.
"Look!" Emily cried, pointing shakily.
The floor beneath them began to pulse, and sections of it twisted up, revealing a cavernous blackness below, inviting and sinister. A horrifying thought plunged into Rachel's mind. What if this was no refuge? What if the darkness wasn't just outside, but also trapped inside here with them? As the growls grew closer, and the shadows began to seep through the cracks, she felt a shiver of realization. They weren't just running from what followed in the woods, they were being drawn into something much older and hungrier than she could ever understand, and as the first tendrils of darkness coiled around her feet, a chilling idea surfaced. This was not merely a hiding place, but perhaps the very heart of their horror. What had they stepped into?
And would it ever let them go?
Rachel stood frozen as darkness coiled around her feet, creeping slowly like a slithering serpent.
The gnawing whispers filled her mind, unsettling in their familiarity, drilling into her heart. "You can never escape." "Mom!"
Emily cried, her voice tiny against the rising tide of despair. Rachel fought through the terror. They had to find a way out. But with every breath, the air grew heavier, thickening with shadows that whispered secrets of the damned. Over there. The stranger pointed to a set of stairs leading up. We need to get to a higher ground, it'll give us a chance. His urgency yanked Rachel back into focus. Come on, now. She grabbed her children's hands tight, leading them toward the stairs that creaked ominously under their weight. Just as they reached the bottom step, another thud reverberated against the door, rattling the frame, echoing the dread swirling in Rachel's heart. They climbed quickly, hearts pounding in chaotic rhythm. Reaching the top, Rachel pushed open a door leading into a small attic that had obviously been abandoned for years. Dust motes floated like trapped memories in the dim light filtering through cracks in the walls. Cobwebs tangled above their heads, and everything smelled faintly of mildew. But she didn't care, this was a haven even if just for a moment. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan whispered, his small face pale and trembling. "I know, baby," she knelt beside him, brushing hair from his brow. "But we're going to be okay. We just need to figure out our next move." She tried to sound calm, but her insides twisted like a reveled ball of yarn. She shouldn't have dragged them here. Just then, they heard it slithering in the darkness below, guttural growls vibrating through the floorboards, crawling closer, closer. Rachel gripped the bat tighter as the sound of shattering glass echoed from the first floor, a reminder that they still weren't safe. "Stay silent," the stranger ordered, crouched low like a predator watching its prey. "It's just outside. If we're quiet, it might pass over us." Rachel swallowed hard, nodding. They'd fend off the tide of darkness, if only for a little longer. She gripped Ethan and Emily, feeling their small forms shaking against her. But it was in that moment of perilous stillness, the room heavy with their breath, that Rachel felt a strange shift in the air. The whispers escalated, climbing higher in pitch and urgency. "Rachel, come to me," a chill slithered up her spine. It was Jake's voice, underlined with a seductive tone that clawed at her heart, pulling her ever closer toward the void of demanding shadows. "Mommy!" Emily wailed, burying her head against Rachel's shoulder. "No!" Rachel yelled, shaking her head as if she could throw away the darkness clawing at her mind. "No! It's not him, it's something else." She felt the weight of those words, the darkness pulling desperately at her resolve, trembling against its grip. But just as she felt her courage falter, the figure lunged inward, breaking through the door with a force that splintered wood and filling the attic with swirling dust. "No!" Rachel screamed, swinging the bat wildly into the space, but met only air. The creature laughed, a sound jagged and mocking, cutting through the silence and vibrating through her bones. "Foolish woman! You cannot fight the inevitable." And in that moment of terror, she realized the true battle wasn't just against a twisted apparition of her husband but the darker shadows of her own heart. The scabs of her own fears, doubts, and despair began to peel open in an agonizing rush. "Mom!" Ethan cried again, panic rising as the creature loomed larger, its form solidifying from shadow into something distinctly horrifying. In a moment of fierce clarity, Rachel felt the weight of her love for her kids. This was their moment. She knew this wasn't just an exterior evil, it was her own fears come to life. The shape lunged forward. "Let them go!" she shouted, the ferocity of a lioness echoing in her heart. She swung the bat blindly but decisively, feeling the cold brush of darkness envelop her. It was almost cruel. How it twisted and whirled around her, whispering sweet nothings of despair. "Rachel," the creature hissed, its voice chilling her blood. "Join us now." She gritted her teeth, swinging again with all her strength. "You are not my husband. You are nothing but darkness." With that proclamation, a spark ignited within her. She felt the strength swell like an eruption, fueling a fire meant to protect. The shadows recoiled for just a moment, a sliver of light piercing through the darkness. "Mom! Let us go!" Ethan shouted, pulling her hand, pulling them away from the threat looming near. The fleeting hope lit beneath Rachel, wrapping around her heart as she dashed toward the stair again, dragging the children with her. They sprinted toward the exit, eager to flee, the darkness still gnashing at their heels, desperate and hungry. Rachel burst through the door and raced down the stairs, her heart hammering against her chest, the the world swirling around her. They stumbled into the night, breathless. The storm had quieted, the creatures still echoing their desperation in the distance. But as they emerged into the open, relief washed over her in a wave. No shadows could take them now. Ahead, the old road lay open, the flickering light ahead beckoning them needed warmth. They would run toward freedom, leaving the darkness that threatened to consume them behind. And in that moment, Rachel understood the true nature of fear. To face it was to step into your power, the light breaking free from the confines of shadow. She glanced back, seeing the tendrils of darkness retreating, shriveling in the presence of their resolve. Together, they raced down the road, hearts united, ready for whatever lay ahead. The true journey had only just begun. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now, it really helps feed the algorithm. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Show your support and let us grow this community together.